This is the day that God has made. We will rejoice and be glad. This is the day that God has made. We will rejoice and be glad. Singing hallelujah, singing hallelujah, singing hallelujah. We will rejoice and be glad. Hello everyone, this is Denise and I'm one of the ministers at St. Paul's United Church, and welcome to Sunday Morning Youth Reflection. As you can see, I am not at the church today because I'm in isolation. So I'm in my home recording this message for you. Let's begin with our routine of lighting the Christ candle. Once there was someone who said such amazing things and did such amazing things that people were always asking, "Who are you?" And once he said, "I am the light." People who love the light follow the light. Friends and neighbors, welcome to this time of reflection and prayer. Last week, I talked about one of the basics of my faith is to live by the golden rule. Love God, love your neighbor, and love yourself. And I talked about it as what I considered one of the foundational, basic bottom lines of Christianity. But I want to tell you that it is not only found in Christianity. Judaism, of course, which is our parent religion, but it's also found in Islam and many of the Eastern religions, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, and many of the First Nations spiritual traditions as well. This week, I thought I'd talk to you about another one of the basics, or what I consider the basics of my Christian faith, and that is the Incarnation. In short, the Incarnation is God with us, but it's not an idea of just an idea of God being with us or God being with us in spirit. It is the idea that God is with us in the very everydayness of life and the material, concrete physicality of life. So God is within us, God is in other people, and God is in all of creation. That's the short version of the Incarnation. In the 21 letters in the New Testament, 7 of them have been written by the Apostle Paul. And the Apostle Paul does a lot of talking about the Incarnation, and he calls it being in Christ. There's a wonderful story in the book of Acts, and it's repeated 3 different times. So it must have been pretty important to the Christians of his time and to himself. First of all, you should know a little bit about Paul. Paul was a tent maker by trade. He had also been educated by Pharisees, so he was very concerned with keeping the laws of Judaism and holding them strictly and abiding by them strictly. So this put him at odds with the followers of Jesus, who were called the followers of the way. And so he went to the temple in Jerusalem and asked if he could go and arrest and round up all of these followers of the way. And he was given permission to do that. And in the book of Acts, chapter 9, it says, as he was going down the road to Damascus from Jerusalem, suddenly a light of heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" He asked, "Who are you, Lord?" The reply came, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But get up and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do." The men who were traveling with him stood speechless because they heard the voice but saw no one. Saul got up from the ground, and though his eyes were open, he could see nothing. So they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. For 3 days he was without sight, and neither ate nor drank. It's interesting in the story that Jesus says to Paul, he's Saul, and that's his Jewish name, and he's known as Paul in the Bible, which is his Greek name, the Greek version of his name. He says to Saul, 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 why are you persecuting me? And it's interesting that he doesn't say, why are you persecuting my followers? And that's the piece that caught Paul's attention as well. And he spends a lot of time talking about his understanding of what he came to call being in Christ, or in Christ Jesus. Knowing this idea of being in Christ is like, in times like this, it's really helpful because we have a lot of time alone. We're doing a lot of different things, and we don't have the same kind of time of hanging out with friends and hugging people and kissing people and being in crowds of people. And so it can be really lonely and frightening, and for a lot of people, it's very anxiety producing. So knowing that God is with us is really important. Now, one of the things that Paul talks about is that he experienced the incarnation of God in Jesus. But as he continues to write about it, he begins to talk about Christ as being more than Jesus, Christ in the followers of Jesus, Christ in all people, Christ in all creation. That he says that Christ was with creation from the beginning of time. And that's repeated in the Gospel of John as well. So there's this idea that God is with us even when we're alone. So the other day when I went out walking my dogs, there was no one else on the street that morning, but I had that sense of God being with me in my dogs, in the trees, in the squirrels and the birds that were singing that day, even in the air and the sun. That sense of being held by God while I was out walking, even though I was alone. So to remind you of this, that God is with you, I invite you today to create a prayer center in your home. Pick out things that remind you of God or experiences you've had of God. For me, the other day, I made a prayer center, and I put on it, first of all, weaving that I got from Guatemala. And it reminds me of my brothers and sisters all around the world who are also having to deal with this same crisis. It's also very beautiful, and beauty is also a reminder to me of God's presence with me. I also have put on my prayer center rocks that remind me of significant experiences I have had of God in my life. The other thing I have in my prayer center is a carving that Lawrence made for me. So it reminds me of God. It reminds me of the beauty in the world and the skill and the talent of my beloved. And it reminds me of Lawrence and the love he has for me and with which he carved this for me. I wonder what you'll put in your prayer center. To conclude our reflection time today, I invite you to focus on the sound of the singing bowl And perhaps say over and over again a mantra like this: I am never separated from God except in my mind. I am never separated from God except in my mind. Thank you for sharing this time with me, and peace be with you, and know that God is with you always, and my love goes with you this day as well. The music I was singing at the beginning of this video is taken from More Voices and is licensed under one license. Thank you.